My name's Mason. I'm 43, live in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I've spent most of my adult life being the responsible one. Not responsible like filing your taxes on time or remembering birthdays. I mean the kind of responsible where you sacrifice quietly, where you pay bills that aren't yours, smile through teeth that want to scream, and keep your life in neat little lines so no one else has to trip. That kind of responsible. For the past 7 years, I've worked 2 jobs. Day shift at the auto shop, night shift at the warehouse. I've got arthritis in my hands and a shoulder that clicks like a metronome when I raise it, but I keep showing up. Because someone had to. That someone, it turned out, was me. Always me. Especially when it came to my younger sister, Brielle. Brielle's 6 years younger. Smart girl. Talented too. Got into a good college in Boulder on a partial scholarship. My folks were over the moon. Finally, someone in the family doing something big. But there was one problem. The scholarship didn't cover rent or food or the kind of lifestyle Brielle got real comfortable with real fast. So guess who picked up the slack? At first, I didn't mind. She was family. My parents asked if I could help just for the first year. That turned into 4. Rent, utilities, books, gas. There were even a few nights where I sent her money so she could go on ski trips and overnight retreats with friends. Because, as my mom put it, she deserves a college experience. Apparently, my experience was supposed to be 16-hour shifts and silence. And Brielle? She strutted around like she earned every dollar. Posting photos from brunches, tagging me in memes about older siblings being second parents, like it was a cute inside joke. I'd laugh. Sort of. Until I didn't anymore. I can't even tell you the exact moment when the resentment took root. Maybe it was when she bought designer sneakers with my money. Maybe it was when she got a tattoo and told me it was self-care. Maybe it was the year she didn't even call me on my birthday, but sent me a Venmo request for groceries. But the real fracture, the one that broke everything, came at a family dinner a few months ago. And brother, when I tell you I didn't see it coming, it was one of those forced family gatherings. You know the type, casseroles you didn't ask for, conversations that feel like job interviews, smiles so fake you could hear them creak. We were at my parents' house, the same split level in Fort Collins where Brielle and I grew up. Mom had gone all out with the roast. Dad had his usual scotch in hand, and Brielle was holding court like she was the guest of honor on her own birthday, which it wasn't. She'd just graduated, finally, after taking a couple mental health semesters. Everyone acted like she cured cancer. Toasts, speeches, even a homemade banner that said congratulations, Brielle, like it was the moon landing. No one mentioned who had paid the rent when she was too busy self-discovering in yoga retreats. I was sitting there, eating my dinner in silence, when it happened. My uncle made a passing comment about how hardworking I was, said something about how lucky Brielle was to have a brother like me. And then Brielle laughed. A full, sharp laugh like someone had just told a joke at my expense. She leaned back in her chair, sipped her wine, and said something that, to this day, still rings in my ears. She said I was just the family mule, that I'd always be the guy who worked 2 jobs and lived in a basement apartment because I lacked vision. She smirked. My parents chuckled like it was harmless teasing. Nobody said anything to defend me. I didn't even move. Just sat there, my fork in midair, while the blood drained from my face. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room, but only for me. The rest of them kept chatting, kept laughing, like it was no big deal. But something inside me cracked. I put my fork down, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and looked right at her. I wasn't loud. I didn't flip the table or throw my drink. I just said, clear as day, that she wouldn't be able to afford that smirk anymore. Not the car, not the studio apartment, not the weekends in Vail. Because as of that moment, I was done. No more rent. No more emergency Venmo requests. No more guilt tripping from Mom about how Brielle's trying her best. I told them all that the reason Brielle lived like a lifestyle influencer was because I made it happen. Then I stood up, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. I think the silence I left behind was louder than anything I could have shouted. I didn't hear from any of them for about a week. No texts. No calls. Just silence. And for once, it felt like peace. I kept going to work, both jobs. Came home, made boxed mac and cheese like a college freshman, and slept like a man who'd finally taken a splinter out after years of pretending it didn't hurt. It was quiet, and I was okay with that, until I got tagged in a Facebook post. Now I don't use Facebook much anymore, mostly because it's a glorified scrapbook of people I went to high school with trying to sell leggings or pitch essential oils. But that notification caught my eye. It said, "Help Brielle stay on her feet." I stared at the screen. It was a GoFundMe. A literal GoFundMe. with her face on it, looking all sad and contemplative, black and white filter, like it was a charity campaign for a wounded animal. The caption? After losing crucial family support, Brielle is struggling to maintain stability while searching for post-grad work. I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so wildly absurd that my body didn't know what else to do. She made it sound like I'd died, or vanished into thin air. Not that I'd just stopped being her unpaid financier. And the comments? Oh, the comments were a goldmine. Her friends, the ones who'd partied on my dime, wrote things like, "You're so brave, and family should never abandon you like that." One even said, "I can't believe your brother would just leave you like this." I was name-dropped, publicly, and I hadn't even done anything except stop bankrolling her ski trips and sushi habits. My blood boiled. I didn't want to play their game, but I also wasn't about to let her rewrite history and cast herself as some fragile victim of circumstance. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged back into Facebook, and I wrote a comment. I didn't write anything cruel, didn't curse, didn't call her names, or air out our family drama in caps lock like some unhinged relative from Thanksgiving dinner. What I did write was simple, honest. I said, just so we're clear, this crucial family support Brielle lost? That was me, her older brother. I paid her rent for 4 years, covered her groceries, bills, car insurance, even her self-care, retreats, and weekend trips, while working 2 jobs, with no thanks, no repayment, just expectations. I didn't abandon her. I just stopped being exploited. That was it. No insults, no drama, just facts. And the silence after that was louder than any reaction I could have hoped for. Her GoFundMe stayed up, but the donations stopped. Cold. A few comments got deleted. One girl even messaged me privately saying she had no idea Brielle wasn't actually working during college, said she thought I was just some estranged sibling with issues. I told her not to worry. That was the image Brielle was always good at curating. Then came the messages from our family. Because, of course, my mom sent a paragraph that started with, "I wish you'd handled this privately," and ended with, "You embarrassed her." My dad's message was shorter. "This was unnecessary, Mason." And my aunt? She called it spiteful, which is rich coming from someone who once blocked me over a missing salad tong. But the one that hit hardest? Brielle. She sent a voice note. I didn't even open it. Just stared at the play button while my thumb hovered, then deleted it. I couldn't do it. Not again. I'd said my piece. And for once in my life, I wasn't going to apologize for it. I thought that would be the end of it. Say your truth, take the hit, move on. But guilt has a funny way of showing up dressed as concern. And my family? Oh, they turned it into an art form. First came the calls from Mom. Voicemails, 2 minutes long, full of soft sighs and phrases like, "We just want the family to be whole again, and you've always been the strong one, Mason." That last one always gets me. The strong one. It's not a compliment. It's a sentence. It means you're expected to absorb the hits without complaint. Pay the bill and smile. Suck it up. Then my cousin Jake, the same guy who once told me I'd never be more than a mechanic, slid into my DMs. Said he was just trying to mediate, and that maybe I should have just kept it off social media. He said this after liking Brielle's fundraiser and leaving a crying emoji under her sob story. Next was the real kicker, my dad. He showed up at the warehouse. I was working the loading dock, had sweat running down my back, arms sore, steel-toed boots making my knees ache, when I saw him standing by the manager's office. Same beige windbreaker he's had for a decade. Same disappointed posture. He didn't yell. My dad doesn't yell. He just said he was disappointed that I'd put family shame on display, that I'd humiliated Brielle. And you know what he called it? Unmanly. That word hit me like a gut punch. Not because I care what people think real men are, but because he always used that word like a weapon, as if being kind was weakness, as if speaking up was betrayal. I just stared at him, wiping sweat from my brow. Told him I wasn't going to argue in a parking lot. He nodded like he expected that. Said one more thing before he left. "You used to be better than this." And for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder if he was right. I should have known she wasn't done. Brielle's never been the type to go quiet, not when there's still attention to be harvested or sympathy left unmined. So when her GoFundMe stalled out and the guilt campaign fizzled, she escalated. She emailed my boss. No, I'm not joking. A full-on, multi-paragraph email accusing me of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and, I kid you not, creating a hostile environment within the family structure. She wrote it like it was a workplace harassment complaint. Used words like gaslighting and power imbalance. Claimed I weaponized money to control her life, and made retaliatory threats when she asserted independence. My boss, Frank, called me into his office the next day. He had the email printed out. I saw my name underlined in bold and Brielle's signature at the bottom, signed like she was a lawyer, not someone who once asked me to pay for a spray tan for networking purposes. Frank didn't say much. He's a no-nonsense guy, ex-Navy, runs the floor like a ship. He just raised an eyebrow and said, "You good?" I nodded. Told him I'd explain if I had to, but he waved it off. Family drama's family drama, he said. Unless she shows up with a subpoena, I'm not reading past page 1. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later that night, when I found out Brielle had emailed my landlord. Apparently, she told him I had a history of anger issues and suggested he keep an eye on things. She was trying to get me flagged, blacklisted, maybe even evicted. Over what? Because I stopped letting her treat me like a debit card with legs? That night I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, and I swear to you, for a split second, I almost caved. Not because I felt guilty, but because I was exhausted. The kind of tired you don't sleep off. The kind that settles in your bones. But then I remembered something. She didn't stop when I said no. She only stopped when the money stopped. A week later, I got a group text from my mom. Rare occurrence. Usually, she only group texts to send blurry photos of the dog and a Christmas sweater or forward Bible verses from her friend Linda. But this message? It was an invitation. Apparently, Brielle had organized a healing circle at our parents' house. That was the actual phrase. Healing circle. Complete with catered lunch, folding chairs in the backyard, and wait for it, a guest speaker. And who was this guest speaker? Some guy from her old college who now ran a transformational coaching business out of Sedona. Wore linen, talked like a TED Talk, probably sold quartz-infused oat milk on Etsy. She called him her emotional mentor. The text said the event was a safe space to process family hurt and reframe conflict through intentional dialogue. Translation: public shaming with snacks. I stared at the screen, half expecting a punchline. But no, this was real. She wanted me to show up, sit in a circle, and, I quote, own my financial toxicity. I didn't respond. At all. Not even a thumbs down. But I did go. Not for the reason you think. Not to apologize. And definitely not to reframe anything. I went because something inside me needed to see just how far she'd take it. I needed to stare the farce straight in the face, just once, and then let it burn. When I pulled up to the house, there were mason jars with cucumber water and hand-lettered signs that said, "We hear you," and "Radical compassion starts here." I parked. Sat in the car for a full 10 minutes, trying not to laugh. Then I got out, walked up the driveway. And the first person I saw was Brielle, in a white flowy dress, barefoot, like a rejected bridesmaid at a yoga wedding. She smiled like she'd just cured me. So there I was, standing on the edge of a lawn sprinkled with dream catchers, intention stones, and folding chairs arranged like we were about to summon a spirit. A few family members were already seated, awkwardly nursing cups of herbal tea. My Aunt Doreen was wearing a shawl and avoiding eye contact. My dad looked like he was mentally disassociating into a sports radio station. And right in the center was the guest speaker, a guy named Phoenix, I swear that was his legal name, who welcomed me with a palms-together bow and said something about my presence being a gift. I muttered something like, "Sure," and sat in the only open chair left, which, naturally, was directly across from Brielle. She was glowing, or thought she was. Phoenix opened the session with breathwork. My dad wheezed halfway through his second inhale and gave up. Then we did a collective forgiveness visualization, which mostly involved staring at each other while Phoenix read what sounded like poetry written by a sentient lavender candle. When he finally said it was time for truth-telling, I braced myself. And right on cue, Brielle launched in. She started crying. Full-blown trembling voice, dabbing her eyes with a tissue she probably pre-creased for effect. Talked about the trauma of growing up in my shadow, the shame she felt when she couldn't afford the things society expected of her, and how masculine financial energy had dominated her inner child. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked around. Mom was nodding, trying not to cry. My uncle blinked slowly, like he couldn't decide if this was an intervention or a hostage situation. And me? I just sat there, still as stone, while she painted herself as this brave survivor of a financial hurricane I supposedly created. Then Phoenix turned to me, said it was my turn to hold space. I almost got up and left. Almost. But instead, I said something. I didn't yell, didn't throw shade, didn't even acknowledge the man in linen pants trying to facilitate our collective rebalancing. I just looked across that circle, straight at Brielle, and I told the truth. Not the dressed-up version. Not the let's keep the peace version. Just the truth I'd been holding inside for too damn long. I told them I wasn't broken. Just tired. Tired of being needed but never seen. Tired of being the family safety net no one ever asked about until they were falling. I said I never agreed to be her provider. I didn't sign up to fund her self-actualization. I was asked to help. I did. And then it became expected. Routine. Entitlement disguised as dependence. And if that makes me toxic, then maybe it's the lens that's warped, not me. I paused, just for a beat. Enough to make her shift in her seat. Then I said this. You cried over canceled brunch plans. I cried in my truck during lunch breaks because I couldn't afford new boots when mine split in December. You post about financial abuse. I haven't had a proper night's sleep in 6 years. You wanted support. I gave you survival. She looked like she wanted to interrupt, but I kept going. You said I controlled your life. No. I delayed mine so yours could exist the way you liked it. Ski trips, sushi nights, a lifestyle I couldn't afford for myself. And the one time I stopped? You called it abandonment. The year shifted. Even Phoenix, bless his blissed-out aura, looked unsure. And then I said the one line that ended it for me. You didn't drown because I was the one sinking. Brielle looked to her mom. Nothing. Looked to Phoenix. He gave her that empathetic TED Talk face. Looked to the ground, maybe hoping for a portal to open. I stood up. Didn't wait for feedback or healing energy. Walked right through the dream catchers and mason jars, down the driveway, and into my truck. Just sat there with the engine off, hands still on the wheel, staring through the windshield like I could finally see the road. And I swear for the first time in years, I wasn't carrying her anymore. I thought that would be the end. I really did. After the healing circle spectacle, after I dropped that final truth like a weight I'd carried too long, I figured the whole mess would quietly shrivel up and die. Maybe I'd get a few more passive-aggressive texts. Maybe a family group chat would mysteriously go silent. But what happened next? It was quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, just empty. No follow-up calls. No apology. Not even a dramatic Instagram story from Brielle subtweeting me with quotes about boundaries or choosing joy. Just silence. And it was worse than noise. Because at least when they were angry, I knew I existed. But now? It was like I'd been erased. For the first time in decades, I didn't get an invite to Mom's birthday brunch. No one asked if I was coming to Thanksgiving. No guilt trip texts about how Dad hasn't been himself lately or how we're all hurting in our own way. It was like I'd been voted off the island, the same island I'd spent years building with my own 2 hands. And I'll be honest, it stung. Not because I missed the chaos, but because I realized how much of my identity had been tied up in being useful to people who never saw me beyond that. It made me sit down and ask, who am I if I'm not fixing their lives? The answer wasn't immediate. Still isn't, some days. But little things started to shift. I started going home after work instead of picking up extra shifts, just in case Brielle needed something. I fixed up my old guitar and started playing again, badly, but still. I even took a weekend trip by myself to Estes Park. First time in years I booked a room for one and didn't feel ashamed about it. The air felt different up there. Thinner, quieter. Like I could hear myself think. And somewhere in that stillness, a question floated to the surface. What if this wasn't the collapse? What if this was the beginning? I woke up the next morning in my own bed, not the couch, not a cot in the garage, not at work. Just my bed. Quiet apartment. No texts waiting. No obligations clawing at my phone screen. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel dread. I made coffee, stood at the window while it brewed, watched the sun move slow across the Fort Collins rooftops. A neighbor's dog barked. A couple jogged past holding hands. Just life. Ordinary, unburdened life. And I realized something. I wasn't sad. Not really. I was just unused to peace. It felt strange, like wearing a jacket that actually fits after years of hand-me-downs that never quite closed right around the shoulders. Around 10 a.m., I got a message from an old friend, Caleb, from my first job at the shop. We hadn't talked in years. He said he'd seen my commentary online. Said he was proud. Said his sister had done the same to him once, and he wished he'd stood up sooner. Said, you finally did what most people never get the guts to. I didn't reply right away. Just stared at that message and let it settle. I wasn't alone. That hit me harder than I expected. I spent years thinking I was the only one tired. The only one carrying more than he should. But turns out, there are a lot of us. Silent older siblings. Family mules. The quiet ones who keep it all going and never get a thank you. Well, I'm not silent anymore. And I'm not going back. Brielle can rewrite whatever version of the story she wants. My parents can pretend it's just a rough patch. Let them. I'm done setting myself on fire to keep their house warm. This quiet morning, this breath in my lungs, this freedom in my chest, it's mine. I earned it. And I'm not giving it up again.